In episode 161 of Bullet Heaven, we took a look at Star Force for the Nintendo Famicom and NES. Originally developed by Tekken, who would later be renamed Tecmo, Hudson Soft was responsible for the Famicom conversion, while Tecmo themselves headed up the similar but different NES version of the game. Still, after all is said and done, the 1984 arcade original is a very different game in a lot of ways, and it has recently gotten the high-def definitive treatment thanks to Hamster. Arcade Archives Star Force was released to the Nintendo Switch on March 1st, 2018. It was also previously released to the PlayStation 4 exclusively in Japan on September 4th, 2015. As always, Hamster has made an excellent 100% faithful conversion out of the arcade original with great modern features that bring it to the forefront of modern caravan shooting. Let's take a closer look. Getting the game started in original mode takes a little getting used to, since the plus button brings up the meta options as with all Arcade Archives and ACA Neo Geo titles. When the title screen appears, players can add credits to the virtual machine they're playing on by pressing the L button on the Joy-Con or compatible controller. The game is then started by pressing the R button. The gameplay in Star Force has always been extremely basic, despite being quite revolutionary for its time. Only two functions exist when piloting the game's ship, known as the Final Star. Moving is done via typical 8-way control, and shots are fired with either the A or B buttons by default. These shots are capable of firing as fast as a player can press the button, to a maximum of 3 shots on screen at a time. Players can also defeat enemies directly to the left or right of the ship by firing when they are right on the rails of the Final Star's wings. It's tricky, but it can be done. Enemies will approach the player in waves, which follow a specific order every time the game is played. Each enemy type behaves differently from others, which allows players, at a glance, to anticipate their movements, fire, and how to avoid them if they can't be dispatched. Enemies can appear with or without firing their shots, which, once again, follows an exact pattern through the entire game. Taking the baked-in patterns into account, players that dispatch enemy waves quickly will see later waves sooner in the game as a result. Since much of the player's score comes from defeating as many enemies as possible, this is obviously beneficial. A number of ground-based emplacements also appear in a predetermined manner as well, which feature a number of destructible elements and hidden bonuses for players to destroy. There are even emplacements that randomly hold extra lives to extend a player's time in a given session if uncovered. Typically speaking, the player will need to press the shot button rapidly to achieve an effective rate of fire. Simply holding the fire button does produce a repeating shot, but it's very slow. A fast trigger thumb is a handy thing to have, but thankfully a couple of power-ups are available to help out the player. First is a small satellite which, when shot, grants a rapid-fire add-on to the player. The music will change when this add-on is engaged and will remain active until the player dies. Another larger satellite can be fired upon until destroyed. When it is finally taken out, it will kill all enemies on the screen. Both of these power-ups appear with prescribed frequency along with certain waves of enemies as the game progresses, giving players multiple chances at regaining them. Star Force is played over the course of 25 stages named after the letters in the Greek alphabet. The last of these stages is named Infinity, which will loop indefinitely and goes for as long as the player can. It takes some serious skill to get that far, which plays into Star Force's overall length. Not only does it take a fair bit of practice to even get that far, it takes a while to do so, and even then, it just goes on forever from there. A number of meta options are also present when pressing the plus button, which allows the player to fine-tune a number of gameplay settings including lives, extend scores, and difficulty. But, more importantly, a set of control options are also present. In the case of the Final Star's weapons, players can opt for a rapid-fire setting with various speeds that can allow for quite a bit of firepower to be dished out very quickly. The Arcade Archives version of Star Force also has a pair of additional modes in tow beyond the original main game. A high score mode is present, which tasks players with scoring as high a score as possible without save states or continues. When the player's final life is lost, the score is tallied and the player can then opt to rank in with their current score. Outside of power-ups, no rapid fire is allowed in this mode. There is also a caravan score attack mode, which has players score as high as they can with only 5 minutes on the clock. Knowing how to shave time off of certain portions of the playthrough is critical in squeezing as much into this mode as possible. And, once again, no rapid fire is allowed. In the case of both of these score modes, some controllers work better than others. Using the 8BitDo SN30 Pro is great for normal play, but it and many other classic rubber-contacted controllers actually have just a bit too much travel to their buttons. Our highest scores have actually come from using just a single Joy-Con on its side. The stick is super responsive, and the micro-switch buttons are able to be pressed much faster thanks to the Joy-Con's small size and shallow button travel. In any case, the control in ACA Star Force is sharp and precise. The gameplay might be basic, but as you can see here, the playtime can be quite extensive for such an early game. All but maybe half an hour or so of this playtime is in the Caravan Score Attack. Seriously, this stands to a testament to ACA Star Force's staying power. Players can just dive in for a quick caravan session or two and be done, and they'd often come away having made some decent progress. That said, where scoring is the name of the game, there are quite a few points to look out for when playing for score. At the time of its initial release, the arcade version of Star Force wasn't even described as a caravan shooter, since it hadn't been featured in the Zenkoku Caravan until the Famicom version in 1985. But all of the elements that would come to be expected of such shooting games are here. Basically, the object of Star Force is to shoot and destroy as many enemy units and emplacements as possible through any given playthrough. Once again, the predetermined enemy waves can be learned and adapted to avoid death as long as possible. Ground-based emplacements also contribute to a huge amount of pointage to the score as well. Many of them are pretty easy to see, but some are hidden and can be uncovered when the player shoots at the tile that they are hidden on. These hidden panels gradually appear over their respective tile with an H emblazoned on them when they are fully exposed. They can be destroyed for bonus points but will not be able to be hit until fully exposed. A number of other bonus panels exist in plain sight though. Panels with both an uppercase and lowercase b will add points to the player's total. Just like the Famicom and NES versions of the game, these panels are extremely important to the player's end stage score. When the boss of a given stage is defeated, the player will receive a bonus based on the amount of bonus tiles destroyed in the stage. This score tops out at 20,000 points, 10,000 for all uppercase tiles and 10,000 for all lowercase ones. However, the total number of destroyed tiles isn't what's actually important here, it's whether any were missed. Miss even one and the 10,000 point bonus drops to 5,000. Miss enough and nothing will be awarded. This bonus is sizable enough that players should be very mindful of the bonus tiles in each and every stage. A number of secret bonuses also exist. For example, in Stage 1, a special mid-boss known as Larios can be defeated before it comes together for a 50,000 point bonus, but only after it flashes white and before it comes together. Other high point bonuses can be obtained by taking out large columns of 10 arrow tiles in a row. There's even a hidden 1 million point bonus for satisfying certain conditions later in the game. The extend score in Star Force is, by default, 50,000 points, then 200,000 points, and finally 500,000 points. A player should be able to hit these scores with no real trouble, especially in the original mode with rapid fire engaged. But, as stated before, some panels can be shot to reveal extra lives which are added to the stock when found. These extra lives are found under question mark tiles, but are always randomized with each play. There are even times when these extra lives don't even exist. It's all part of the risk-reward of Star Force, especially when contending with some really nasty opposition. When it comes to the timed caravan mode, players need to race against the clock to kill more enemies and emplacements to get that high score. Knowing where to shave off precious seconds is important, as is not dying. One handy trick to use is to pay attention to the last 3 digits of the score when taking on a boss. If the hundreds are odd, the boss will drift left. If even, it'll hang right. This will allow players to anticipate and kill the boss much faster than waiting and seeing, which can help in keeping the game going at a snappier pace despite the time wasted during the stage end point tally. The online leaderboards really make the Switch version of ACA Star Force the ultimate classic caravan shooter in a lot of ways. Not only can players compete online in any of the 3 modes with instantly updated scoreboards, they can do it anywhere they might be. We're totally guilty of tethering our Switch to our phones just to get another competitive round in. Hamster has caravan modes in many of its games, but so far, ACA Star Force has somehow managed to be the most fun in this respect. Arcade Star Force is definitely a step above the Famicom and NES versions of the game when it comes to its visuals and sound, for the most part. Of course, it's still an arcade game from 1984, so there are absolutely limits to the graphics, sound, and music here. Visually, the color palettes used are much richer and varied than the Famicom and NES versions, allowing for a much wider range of colors on screen at once. There are also a number of different ground-based emplacements that never made it into the NES or Famicom versions as well. This makes for a much more varied graphical presentation. There is also a much more detailed starfield as well, which scrolls by at a slower rate on a parallax background layer. Enemies and bosses are also much clearer and better colored than the Famicom and NES versions, with several color tones. The music in Arcade Star Force is once again better than the NES and Famicom versions with a higher quality, richer sound and more active sound channels than the 8-bit versions we looked at before. The explosions here are also pretty satisfying, though they can get a little tiresome over extensive periods of time. However, the exception to the decent sound in this version is definitely the effect used for powered-up shots. They are loud and shrill and can really become annoying in very little time. Rounding out the presentation in ACA Star Force is a clean, easy-to-follow splash screen, options for wallpapers, and several screen filters including scanline settings. There's even Tate support, allowing players to play the game on a vertical monitor or with the Switch screen itself on its side, for Tate at home or on the go. But the game's meta options have even more features. A number of other options for save states, adjustments, effects, and enhancements for the game's sound, and even game performance improvements are tweakable in these menus. Basically, ACA Star Force is a great game for competitive caravan score chasers who pine for the early simplicity that early arcade games offered. But how does it stack up? Let's take a look. Sharp control gives ACA Star Force a satisfying precision no matter the control style chosen. ACA Star Force offers a great challenge in its core 25+ stage game, and that doesn't even count its higher difficulty settings. In terms of length, ACA Star Force's huge 25-stage main game is long enough, but score chasers could play it forever. Star Force was made with this kind of competitive gameplay in mind, and it shows. ACA Star Force has a sharp, chunky look to its visuals that we dig, but they are still very basic. The enemies are varied and fairly detailed, but in the end, the bosses are also simple shapes with letters in them. Sound-wise, once again, ACA Star Force perfectly replicates the sound found on the original arcade Star Force, which is a little on the simple side with really irritating powered-up shots. If we're talking ingenuity, there's no denying that Star Force revolutionized shooting games back in 1984, but ACA Star Force takes the great caravan-style gameplay and drives that caravan to the worldwide stage. Its additional online leaderboards make this, or the PlayStation 4 version, the one to play. At about $8 US, ACA Star Force is a game that every shmup fan should play if only to see how they stack up on the worldwide leaderboards. Its infinite replayability gives it excellent value. Hamster knows what's up when it comes to making the very best arcade conversions possible for modern systems. There's a real reason why Nintendo themselves have entrusted them to convert some of their most cherished arcade games after all. ACA Star Force is just no exception, and it shows how even games from the dawn of modern arcade shooting can be relevant in today's gaming landscape. ACA Star Force gets a 4 out of 5. You can get a copy of Arcade Archive Star Force on the Nintendo Switch via the Nintendo eShop or on PlayStation 4 via the PlayStation Network in Japan for about $8 US. There have been a lot of shmups on the Switch, holy crap. I know it seems like it's all we're covering these days, and I can't really disagree. We still have a couple left in the chamber though, but we're hoping to clear them out to look at some other games soon. At least ACA Star Force is multi-platform, albeit with a Japanese-only release on PS4, but hey, our slogan has never been truer than ever before: shooters forever.